So let's call the meeting to order. Mark, I'm sure, will be here as soon as he can. And first order of business is to approve the prior minutes. The two of us, Mike, you and me, I'll make a motion to have the minutes, approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, any questions? All in favor? Mike?
Okay, all in favor. I'm taking notes for Mark.
Oh, okay.
Taking the minutes for Mark.
Okay. Okay, so we did that. That's good. Gee, I don't really want to. Wanted to wait for Mark to talk about the legal issues. Well, let me just, one comment on the legal issue. Mike, I mentioned to Seth the discussion of talking about FOIA and having Wayne talk about it at the next meeting, and Seth said he'd bring it up at the rules meeting, which is fine. Okay?
Okay. Yep.
That's done.
Mark's on.
Oh, great. He looks like a man from outer space with that headset. A white one too, matches his shirt. I'm impressed. Oops, I forgot we're recorded. Good, that'll confuse people. They'll never want to watch our stuff anymore. That would be fine. Ready, Mark?
I'm actually just wrapping up a call here. I'm hoping it's 5 minutes, so I'm going to put you guys on mute, okay?
Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, well, I can say, because this isn't, the other question is there's been no response from the selectmen yet about the steering committee, and Seth is in touch, has sent an email about that, so he will follow up at some point. That's a technology subcommittee that we're talking about, okay?
Yeah, Lois, they're going to put together a mission and discuss the makeup of the committee at their February 8th meeting.
Okay. Kate, so you know what we have talked to Seth about? And that was, one was if somebody from the RTM could be of benefit to the committee based on technology expertise, okay? And the second point was to consider somebody from our tech steering committee, our tech subcommittee, to be an ex officio member of the committee.
I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we're totally willing to do it, but when the three of us spoke, none of us felt we had strong enough technology experience that we would add, but we were sure that there's some RTM members that would have really valuable experience that could really help. Okay, so I'll let Seth know and make sure that he talks to Jamie before then. Okay, so thank you. That's great.
The only IT experience I have is how to call the IT person.
And Mark's answer was, he said, I'm very good at analyzing what the issues are. So anyway, so let's move on. And I'll repeat it to Mark separately, or we'll just put it in the notes, that one of the other questions we had about whether we could stop mailing information, and the need to mail the agenda of an RTM meeting and the resolutions, it's required to be sent out by the charter. So we can't eliminate those.
Unless we revise the charter.
Right, and I don't think, and I said charter or site, he said charter. I said, okay. I guess you could pull it out of the charter and then do some other stuff, but. So it's not.
I wonder how much was that a line item of how much it costs to mail materials to the RTM over a fiscal year?
It's not a costly thing. I think it's more the time, and it is a time-consuming process.
Yeah, but somebody's got to stuff 100 envelopes.
Yeah, and then you also the time of it, getting in the mail.
Well, maybe we talk to Frank to.
Yeah, I think that's do you want me to give Frank a call and see where it's buried? Okay.
Their agenda's been, since they don't have any bag bills, they're quiet. They need to give him something to do. He's got to have a reason to meet.
Monica's not raising her hand now. Okay. Okay. Got that. Okay, let's talk about attendance. So just as a background, what we were talking about, how do we have attendance, what's required, and can we do it without a roll call? And the purpose of that is more of a time-saving sense.
And I did check with Lisa that I forwarded the note to all of you that she does adjust for late arrivals. So if Kate were keep the attendance among the participants or whatever GoToMeeting, that would be, and she captures everyone who was there. Even if someone came late, she didn't have to worry about breaking something about you're only counted if you're there at the beginning. Lisa said she adjusts for late arrivals. So that would mean we would not have to do a roll call. You know, and the complications, as you mentioned in your roll call, of some people know how to turn on the mic, some people know how to raise their hand, some people, the information that you have, Kate, is more accurate than taking a roll call.
Yeah.
So, Monica? Go ahead.
Monica?
What's considered a late arrival?
I didn't get into the specifics. She just says she adjusts the attendance if someone comes. If she sees someone come.
You know, I would assume that they always
did that, but she said that late arrivals are okay.
Okay, because we need a quorum. So if a person arrives 20 minutes in, is the quorum only a focal point when it comes to a vote?
So no, you can't start the meeting and conduct business without a quorum. So going back in history, we had the meeting to approve the high school appropriation in the summer, and the meeting was scheduled to start at like 8 o'clock. We couldn't start it until number 50 arrived in the auditorium. So I believe it probably started late. And if anybody had left, and so we went down to say 48 members, we would not have been able to conduct business at that point. You could only discuss. So you need a quorum to actually act. It's not a problem for somebody to come late. So if you already have a quorum and somebody shows up late, that's not a quorum issue. You know, it might be your rules that say we shouldn't count them as present, but how do you not let them vote? I think they've always been allowed to vote.
That's why I was checking with Lisa. She said there's nothing in the rules that precludes her from marking the person there.
Mark, we're talking about the attendance discussion.
Yep. Thank you.
So Kate, right now, so how does it work right now? You get a list of people that have come in?
I have a list that, you know, Lisa had given me an Excel spreadsheet of all the members.
I might be getting feedback from your, you could just mute to see if that's where it's coming from. Thanks.
So I took that list and we sorted it alphabetically by first name, because that's how you show up on the dashboard that I see. And I actually sit there and I physically check them off as I see them coming in. I can actually sort it by when you arrive as well. And that's what I usually do, is sort you by when you arrive. And then it makes it easy for me to go look at the names. And then I go off that list. But after the meeting, I send Lisa the attendance report from the software, and it puts everybody, again, in alphabetical order. It lists what time they arrived, what time they departed, and if they came and went, it shows that as well. It shows any questions they asked. I don't give those to Lisa, but then it also shows the polling. If we asked a polling question, it shows how they voted on that. I can send you guys a copy of it, of one.
Yeah, that would be great. So do you actually keep that list running the whole time then?
So the attendance is running the whole time. I can look at it any time. And in fact, I think the last few meetings I've allowed set it up so that people who were in the meeting can also see the attendance.
Yeah. But so if someone leaves, does their name drop? At what point do you freeze the list? If someone leaves early, do they drop off the attendance list that's then provided?
So
Lisa.
they would drop off the screen, right? On that report,
They're still,
it would show what time they left.
yeah, okay.
Well, actually, I think when we're in a meeting, there's a little number next to the participants, and you can see how many people are in,
Yes.
so that we really all can see what the current number is. So then the only question becomes how many people are there that aren't registered, aren't RTM voting members.
Yes.
And one of the things I think you suggested, Kate, which I think was a good idea, that you could make any of the presenters as presenters so that they don't count. You don't have to worry about them.
Yeah, there's a limit on how many people can be presenters. Off the top of my head, I don't recall what it is, but what I've done is like Cheryl Telesco. We make her a presenter. I've done that with Wayne. If I know that staff is going to be there, I try and set them up as presenters.
You count yourself as a presenter?
Pardon?
Yourself?
No,
You-
I'm staff because I'm an organizer. So I actually, on the attendee screen, I see two different things. I see attendees and I see staff.
Oh, okay.
But you know what happens, like other members of the board of selectmen come to, like Jamie will come, Sarah will come. If I don't know they're coming, I haven't set them up ahead of time as presenters. I could change them during the meeting, but that just gets, it's a lot to do, manage all that.
Okay. Well, okay. So for having a count, whether we have enough for a quorum and stuff is really looking at the participant count. Is that how we should do that?
Well, kind of both. Looking at the participant count and looking at all the names that I've checked off as being there. And running down and making sure you have at least 50.
Okay.
And we talked about if you decide to stay with GoToMeeting, it would take us a month to do for each steering committee to have a meeting, but at the beginning of each meeting, have the meeting manager, or I would do it, or Cecil would do it, get everybody to put their name, the district number and their name correctly the way you want it to sort.
Yeah. That would make life a lot easier.
Would it?
Yeah, because if you put your district number in front of your name, in front of your first name, because it sorts you alphabetically by your first name, all the ones would show up, then all the twos.
Yeah, and I see the different, because I do the rules committee and I've done, I don't know, 3 or 4 others. It would just, at the beginning of the meeting, as people come on, you just tell them, here's where you go and change your name. And just put, and so it's consistent with having the not Roman numeral and not at the end. And I see
Not
some
district
people that-
for, Joe Smith. And
Yeah, but it would take a month, it would take just to go through one pass of the steering, and the people who weren't there, but over a couple of months, it could get done.
But if we changed it once, how do we change it so it stays changed and it's not
once
just?
you change it, it stays.
Once you change it, it stays. I can change it here on any one, but it reverts back when
Oh, I see.
but if I show you how to change it on your screen, it will stay.
So we should do that anyway, because it makes it easier for you, right, Kate?
Right.
It would, when we tried.
Well, we
tried
can, yeah.
before the annual meeting, because you were going to have to vote by districts, and there was a varying level of understanding of what we were asking, and some people tried and could not. And without me actually working on their device or anything, I don't know what their issue was, but I was told that some people, depending, like maybe they're using iPads, they couldn't do it. It wasn't giving them the opportunity to go in and change their name.
Monica, you on an iPhone now?
Yeah, that was me, Kate. I couldn't do it because I'm on an iPad.
Yeah. And
I had the same problem.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world, honestly. If we maybe had somebody who was kind of permanently a extra panelist or extra organizer, that might help. Or, we are looking at whether or not we can get Zoom to work and do the polling questions and run the reports the same way that GoToMeeting does.
Mhm.
Um,
Where are you on that? You're still researching? Is that where you are?
We haven't been able to get the reports every time we've tried running a polling question in Zoom, and then I run a report afterwards. We're doing something wrong. And we're going to try doing it next week with making people register for the meeting and see if that makes the difference.
And can you do Zoom with people registering? Oh,
Yeah, you can. I think you can make people register for the meeting.
okay.
And that may be all that's necessary.
I mean, we could, if we should just stay on it, and if it helps, we could do it through the district chairs to, the rules committee could say, this is a great idea. Let's do it. Let's ask the district chairs to get in touch with everybody and stay with them till we get everybody with the districts. I think that, and if you get 75% of the people doing it, it's still going to make your life easier, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Then we'll bring it up at the next, I don't know, should we do it for this? I think we should do it. Go to the rules meeting and then ask to the districts to do it rather than jumping in trying to do it for Monday. Because then,
Yeah, don't try and do it for Monday.
No, but it would be over a month. It could be done as each committee meets. Because in theory, that will be everybody in every district, because where someone can talk them through it right there.
That's good point.
I mean, as people log on, say, here, we need to set this up for the next RTM meeting. Here's what device are you on? Here's how you do it on an iPhone. And if you can't do it on an iPad, you won't have to do it on an iPad. But if you have it on here's how to do it on your iPhone, and here's how to do it on your computer. Because I went in and the directions are, the locations are slightly different on GoToMeeting.
so Mike, do you want to get in touch with them after that? I think we should talk about it in the rules meeting and then go to the meeting managers, because that would be a good way of asking that to happen. And the only exception to that would be me, because we're using Zoom, but I'll take responsibility of trying to get public health and safety on board. Is that a good way to do it then?
Yeah, as long as it depends when Kate makes the decision on if you're going to switch or not.
Yeah, right now I'm kind of focused on the budget, so.
Yeah, so, but we could talk about it. We can get it done in February. Most everybody done in February, if every committee has a meeting.
Okay.
So three were canceled this week, but I see the schedule for February and pretty much everybody's got a meeting.
A lot of meetings get canceled, but you can still have the coordinator for any committee just take this on and just send out emails to people.
Or do it when they log on
Or
too.
help them.
Up when they log on. It's a 15-second process.
Okay. So are we all in agreement that we'll just go ahead with this? And if we switch over to Zoom, Kate, we switch over to Zoom and we'll deal with it at that point. I mean, that's not happening in February or March, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe by March, but definitely not in February.
Just two clarifications. It was said that if you change it once, it stays. So that suggests that it's a field in GoToMeeting, not in the device. And then those of us on iPad, we couldn't change it. And I'm wondering, is what's being picked up there? I don't know if you remember, Monica, was it your device name? I just went in, for instance, here and changed it because I saw it was wrong.
Well, you're in Zoom. We're in Zoom now because we're not in GoToMeeting.
Well, right, but where I'm headed is Zoom feeds off the device name.
I think it's
And I'm
something
wondering-
about, it's what, like the cookies or, whatever your device is remembering, and whether or not it lets you change it once it's remembered it.
Okay.
Yeah, GoToMeeting, it remembers mine.
Okay.
Maybe we'll just do a quick GoToMeeting at some point and just play around with it a little
Just try
for
it.
us. Yeah. Okay. But
It sounds like it'll work for most devices other than maybe the iPad and the iPhone. And I'm trying to figure out a way to make those work.
Along those lines, I think someone said to me they thought it had to do with when you first registered for the meeting, because we use our same meeting link all the time, don't we? Our same permission to get into the meeting all the time, Kate?
Could be.
No,
No,
it's a new one each time. But I think what it is that you might have settings in your computer that remember what you used the very first time. And it's getting it to let you change that.
Yep.
All right, we should play around with it a little bit.
Yeah, I'll look into it.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, so at this point, we're not asking the district chairs or the committee chairs to set this up? Is that correct?
I think we will ask I think we're in agreement that we'll try and use the meeting chairs. And that I think we should discuss it at the next rules meeting, but we will try and clarify, what are the glitches?
Okay.
Yeah, before that meeting, we'll have a meeting on GoToMeeting and make sure that we know how to do it on different devices.
Okay,
We'll just schedule I'll schedule a GoToMeeting if I've got credentials, and we'll just schedule our next meeting maybe on GoToMeeting, and I'll run it, and we'll go in and see how about changing names on different devices.
Okay, is everybody in agreement with that? We're good? Okay, that's it, attendance. Let's talk about how running the meeting and the different roles and what's needed. So the meeting's going on. So we have attendance taking, we figured out the list, but so Kate, are you okay monitoring attendance and making sure we have our quorum?
Yeah.
And keeping to the quorum, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Cecil's been there, and Cecil will continue to be there to help you, right?
Yes. What
And
we
that's a
have
real-
been doing is Cecil deals with the questions that are coming in, through the chat function and all, and I'm more maintaining the attendee list.
So that was,
throughout the meeting. Is that what you're saying, Kate? Because I'm thinking
Yeah, I'm
people come
keeping,
in late, people leave early,
yeah,
maintaining the quorum. It doesn't happen often, but
we
happen.
haven't been in a position where we've had to worry about the quorum,
Yep.
but if I can share my screen for a minute, I'll show you what it looks like.
okay. Thank
okay,
you.
can you
No,
share?
it says you've got it disabled. You would have to enable.
You have to enable Kate as a co-host.
Okay, I found it. Okay, try again now, Kate. See what happens. Look at that.
So
Yeah.
see this little thing over here? Can you see that?
Over on the right or the left?
Where my cursor is on the
Oh,
left?
Yep, I see it now.
Box.
Yeah, this is what I see. So right here is the attendee list. And I have a couple of my staff signed in, and you can see they have their hands raised.
Oh, okay.
So, down here is where questions pop up from people. If somebody were to ask a question, that's where it shows up.
And
And
that's
then down,
different from, a question is different from chat?
chat is more directed. So you can type in a question and it sends it to the organizers. But chat, I could actually, and I've done this, send a message directly to an individual person. So like some of the people who have trouble with raising their hands, when they raise their hand at a weird time, I might send them a chat and say, do you really have a question? And that just goes back to me.
So are questions things that the members of the meeting do, and
Yeah.
chat is something you control?
Yeah, questions are something that a person in the meeting can do. Somebody in the meeting would have a thing over here that has a question mark on it. And that just shows up to the organizers.
Oh, okay.
That like the time I had my email showing, got a lot of questions saying, your email showing. But this is, it's not a very big screen, and it does scroll. And like if I put one hand down, I can sort by hands raised, so I can see who's got their hands raised.
Wow.
But it can move really fast. Lots of people raising their hands, and this is where I can mute and unmute everybody.
Okay.
So I'll stop sharing.
So who monitors? So right now, chat is monitored by Cecil, or
Questions are monitored by Cecil. Chat is usually, because we're initiating it, it might be him sending something to me, or if I send something to a person who's in the room.
Okay.
I would monitor my own, my own messages out, and he would monitor his own.
Okay. So question on chat and questions. Is it working okay for you? Do you need any more support on that?
I think it's working okay. I think people are getting used to it now, and we don't get as many questions as we did at the first couple meetings. A lot of what we got was like, "I'm here, do you see me?" Or "I vote no." So I think people are getting used to how to use the software, and they're more comfortable with what they're doing. So we're not seeing as many of those things. It was hard the first couple meetings. It was really hard to be trying to watch. And I think after the first one, Cecil and I were like, okay, we need to split it up, because we can't both be watching the attendance and watching the questions.
Yeah, that's one difference between Zoom. Doesn't have a question and a chat. They only have the chat function on Zoom. There's no question function on Zoom, I don't think.
The chat really isn't an issue. It's the questions.
Yeah, I didn't, when we were talking about the duplication, I didn't know if there was a question box and a chat box on GoToMeeting, because since Zoom doesn't have that, and that's where I spend most of my time.
Yeah.
And chat, if we do chat, does it go, you can choose whether it goes to everyone or somebody in particular.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The more the issue is like, watching for people raising their hands, needing to unmute them, seeing the questions come in, trying to be responsive to those. You kind of can't do both.
So back to my question, are you okay with, so you and Cecil have split it up where you're watching the hands and the attendance and the chat because they're directing, or no, Cecil's watching the chat, right?
Well, I watch the chat if I've sent the chat message out.
Okay.
I keep it open so that I can see if somebody has, responded to what I asked them. I think one of the bigger issues is making sure we take our time. That you allow for when we ask, does anybody have any questions? Please raise your hand. Not moving on from that too quickly.
Yeah, we've mentioned this to Seth a number of times, and I do believe that he's getting better on that. People do have a lag between when that question is asked and when they decide, oh, actually, I have a question. But Kate, I just want to back up to the chat. So the chat it's driven by you, right?
Yeah.
If I as an RTM member have a question, it's going to go to Cecil. Not to you. The chat
Correct.
is from you to okay.
Yeah, I have to initiate the chat. So I could send you a message. I could send you a chat, and then you can respond to me. But you can't initiate it to start with.
Okay, and then on Zoom, there is no chat, correct?
No, there is a chat, no question.
There's no question. Okay.
No question, there is a chat.
Okay. I'm going to mute myself again.
And Kate, is the chat is the one-to-one effectively? And
yes.
If Monica raised a question, would I see her question, or does it only go to Cecil?
Only goes to Cecil. Well, and me, but.
Yeah, okay. But there's no, like the chat that I'm looking at in Zoom, you can do everyone or just a specific person.
Right, so I could send a chat out to everyone.
And then if I responded to you, will everyone see my response or not?
Oh, I'm trying to think about that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think you might have the option of saying to everyone or just to me, because I sent it to you. Okay. But I definitely have the option to send it to just one person.
But Lois doesn't have the ability to send a chat to everyone, only you and Cecil.
She doesn't have the ability to initiate it.
Right, that's, yeah, that's what,
Yeah.
in Zoom, anybody can send a message to everyone.
But in GoToMeeting, once you initiate one, Kate, if you're the presenter, then everyone's open to responding. It's an open chat.
Yeah, like if I sent a chat to everyone, everyone could respond.
Right, or some subset.
Everyone would see it.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we were talking about is either Monica or somebody playing a role in helping make the meeting work smoothly for all of, everybody, but as a manager kind of thing, okay? And it sounds to me like attendance seems to be okay unless we get really skunked and we're really close to our quorum, at which point probably a roll call would be needed. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I would say so.
I can see your chat, Mike, because I have chat open.
And frankly, the attendance has been so good. I don't think a quorum is going to be an issue
I agree.
as long as we're remote.
We've had people attending from, all sorts of places.
Is this authority part of the February 9th rules that the governor has to, I was watching his news conference today, that he's got to renew on February 9th, or is this a order that expires later?
Ooh, no, I thought he already extended the authority to have virtual meetings.
Yeah, he may have. I just, the part of the discussion was that he has all these orders that expire on February 9th, and they were talking about whether the legislature that they were in session was going to limit some of the authority that he had in executive orders. But they didn't discuss what executive orders those were.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that we were allowed to continue doing virtual meetings. I'm looking at the trying to look through them. There's so many of them now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't imagine the legislature's something that they've objected to. They would object to.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah. So let's just assume that they will take care of it, whichever way it goes. I think
9H, remote participation in agency. I think it's 9H.
And
Yeah, it was extended. Not sure when it runs out.
Okay. But it's a good point, but I think if we can't do it, somebody's going to scream.
Yeah.
Well, there's going to come a point when you're not going to want to do it this way anymore.
But we're not there.
No.
And I've raised some questions about that, and Seth reminds me that it's too far in the future, just wait. So we've got chat covered, we've got hands covered, we've got questions covered. So I'm back to, and the attendance is an issue when if we have a lot of people, but we can talk about that separately. So is there a role for slowing down the meeting or making sure we haven't missed something? Or, the question is having Seth, Kate, you, and Cecil monitoring things, or do you need a fourth person? And if so, what would their role be?
So, just one issue with the organizers, that polling doesn't work for the organizers, so they don't get to vote.
Right.
I think one of our biggest problems was the speed with which we moved sometimes. Early on, the first couple meetings, people didn't get the raising of the hands. And I actually had people tell me afterwards that they were literally raising their hands, not clicking doing the electronic thing. And so they didn't understand why they weren't being included in vote counts. So I think a big part of it is just taking the meetings at a slightly slower pace. And I do think it really helped with a couple meetings where we wrote out what had to happen. to make sure that we didn't skip over anything.
When we had a script, right?
Yeah.
For,
One-
for the
One of our goals was just by the sheer numbers that Seth can be directed and not have to try to be monitoring things too, that he can be directed of Lois has raised her hand, Seth, or
Yeah.
somebody out loud to whisper in his ear where he needs to go next in terms of recognizing, so he doesn't have to juggle the agenda and looking for people who he's supposed to recognize.
Right. And that kind of thing might come better from somebody standing in the RTM as opposed to an employee.
From this group, my thought on this is I found it interesting that the votes and the comments definitely moved quicker under the virtual forum than when we were in the auditorium. I mean, when we pose questions, we've got the people going up and down the aisles and futzing around with the microphones, and then the votes, we go through the whole rigmarole of, we all raise our hands. The district chair counts them and goes all the way to the front. Yet on this setting, we seem to stroll through it. It would seem, I'm just thinking, it would seem if we can work with Seth to lower the pace, or to take our cue or his cue from Kate, you and Cecil, if it's you two of the presenters or running the meeting. Just it seems like almost this ought to be one of the easier things for us to solve. I don't know if it's that simple, but I love that it moves fast, frankly, but it was moving too fast, and especially with the tech, what has to go on behind the scenes that we all don't see.
Monica, do you have any thoughts on how a fourth person could fit in? Because Kate also reflected the fact that Kate and Cecil have very specific things they're looking at, and maybe it would be better to have somebody, the RTM, either you or me or somebody, to assist Seth from a manage his process standpoint. I guess I'm.
I think that's a good question, because Lois, I found myself on a couple of the occasions when I saw Kate was struggling to keep up. Almost wanted to speak up and say, "Hey, let's hold off a moment." I think I was struggling with my mute button at the time. but I do remember once or twice literally thinking, "Okay, so we got to slow down here. This is moving too quick for the folks trying to track it." Yeah, I don't know who. Maybe designate someone, Monica, or someone on the rules,
you know
maybe.
what? I'm happy to do it, and I don't know. This committee, I'm sure, can figure out a way to patch so that I am able to communicate with Seth. But what I'm hearing is that things have gone too fast, and we've had this conversation a couple of times. But this is a different format, and so. And when you're running a meeting, you just want to check those boxes off. Okay, now we're on to, agenda number 9, whatever. But if it works that you want to patch me into Seth and I can let him know there are questions, or, hey, pause 15 seconds here, happy to do it. But this conversation also has occurred before. So I think he's more aware that timing is important, but I'm happy to, if you can patch me through, and I, in the past, I've actually physically called him, which is a little tricky when you're on the call and you're getting a phone call, but I needed to let him know something, and that was the only way to get through. So I'm happy to do it, but like I said, I think he has considered solving this problem.
My suggestion is, Monica, how about you and I talk to Seth about it?
Yes, and that conversation's happened. But it doesn't mean that there might be a question that that he should be made aware of, and I'm not sure that should be Cecil's responsibility. Not really, that's, if the question doesn't get asked for some reason, I don't want people to be upset with him because they feel he made a judgment call, whatever, that kind of thing. That's putting a lot on him. So I'm looking at it like a little bit, you know, not just the timing thing. Because like I said, I think that's been addressed.
It may not be any more complicated than having a stand with and he's got his text messaging open and you send him a text message, but he's got a little stand right next to his computer and his phone always on, that he sees messages from you that pop up.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say that's imperfect. You know, when you're running a meeting, you're, you know, trying not to look at your phone. But I think what Kate said, I think writing out the presentation and having in bold, wait 30 seconds or wait 15 seconds, you know, that could be, but I'm also thinking a little bit different in that if there are specific questions that are directed to Seth, to make sure that he gets those, and whoever is, you know, whoever is organizing it doesn't have too much responsibility.
You know, I'm wondering if you might want to designate one or two people whose mics I try and leave on, because I usually mute everybody except for like Seth and whoever's going to be speaking. Partly because, you know, some people will have other things going on in the background and, you know, it interferes with the meeting. But you know, it could be a thing where, like Monica, I leave you unmuted, and you know, you can verbally step in. I don't know if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, I was thinking that concept, Kate, as well. I wasn't thinking of anyone specifically, but someone obviously tech savvy who doesn't do the feedback in the background, the dog barking, all that stuff. But you know, maybe even one or two people, not to have it all on one person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that way, if one's distracted, another can
I think
get Seth's attention.
I think part of that would be separating some of the chat stuff or the questions pieces to know what are questions that really need to go to Seth that he needs to incorporate in the meeting, and what are questions that Kate, either you or Cecil follow up on, because they have to do with more how are we functioning using the tech.
Yeah. And you know, since Seth doesn't vote as the moderator, if he's in the meetings as a panelist, that gives us a little bit more access to him behind the scenes. You know, to clue in, oh, we have a question about this, you know, please pause and answer that.
Okay. Well, I think the last meeting you were doing that out loud. Seth would say to you,
I did, yeah.
and that was fine. You know, I mean, I think that works. I think I'm concerned about having a real question that gets lost. That might be more appropriate to have Monica ask a real question than have Cecil break in and say, we have this question here. I think that's what you were sort of implying, Kate.
Yes, yeah.
So can we do that technically? Can Monica still vote and be able to see the question?
You know, just have to kind of stay on top of it, and, you know, if at any point I have to mute everybody to make sure I go back and find her in the list and unmute her.
Okay. But that's a one-time thing. That's right at the very beginning? Or do you mute everybody several times in the to clear it?
Well, hopefully we never do again. You know, I don't know what vote it was that Seth asked for a voice vote, and that was just not a good thing. Yeah. But usually, yeah, it's just everybody comes in muted and I unmute them as they're called upon to speak.
Okay. Well, maybe do you want to try it? Well, Monica, let's talk with Seth and see how he'd like to try it for the next meeting. Does that work?
Yeah. So Kate, so then if I'm going to be seeing the questions, then I wouldn't be an organizer, right?
Right. You wouldn't see the questions unless you're an organizer.
Okay.
And then you can't vote if you're an organizer.
Yeah, and that's the problem for you. If, you know, you don't, organizers and panelists cannot answer the polling questions.
Okay.
So if you want to keep voting that way, it doesn't work.
And so, I'm sorry, what was the issue with raising the hand to be recognized to ask your question? If there's a question to be asked in the auditorium, we raise our hand we get recognized and we speak.
Right.
And that's consistent with the notion of slow the pace down. I don't think it would take any longer.
Yeah,
to do that
sometimes
exact same
people,
thing.
sometimes the issue is the people who send their questions in through the chat function or through the question
Right.
function, sorry. So, maybe the answer to that is Cecil needs to respond. Please raise your hand to be recognized.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm thinking in the auditorium, we never had a back channel way to get our question in. We always had to raise our hand and wait to
Right.
be recognized. Now all of a sudden we're accommodating a back channel way, which is nice.
But it shouldn't be that way.
I'm thinking it shouldn't be that way. I think that's, we've got the hand raise feature.
Okay, I'm good with
And
that.
I still think it's quicker than, walking up to the microphone and going through the whole, microphone thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to show my ignorance to Robert's Rules of Order, but in the meeting last summer, when can someone speak and not be recognized? If you remember the meeting where the discussion was over whether someone should be allowed to talk or not, and someone, I guess, whose mic was open spoke up, but they weren't recognized. But someone told me later, well, in that circumstance, someone can speak up without being recognized on a point of order.
So if you were live and in person, and remember what was happening there, somebody was raising an issue that was not germane to the topic under discussion.
Right.
Okay. So if that happened while you were all sitting in the auditorium, any member of the RTM could just yell out point of order and make their, point of order. He's not on topic.
Right.
So what happened in that instance, we were getting flooded with questions saying point of order, point of order. And I felt, if we were live and in person, they would get to do that. So I unmuted somebody.
Right. Okay. So that's out. So, okay. That's out.
Yeah.
So maybe the solution there, because that's a good point. If someone wants to raise a point of order, how do we recognize it? Let's recreate that scenario, Kate. If everyone had gone off mute, would that have stopped the process? I mean, let's be honest, that would have stopped everything.
Would they
it
do
does
point of
happen.
order in either chat or questions?
Yeah, we were getting people sending through the question function, sending us point of order, point of order.
Well, so if you're getting that, is that something that Monica could say to Seth, we're getting a number of people who are calling for a point of order?
So remember that the questions aren't seen by everybody. So I think probably the better way to have handled it was for me to have interrupted and said,
okay.
Seth,
Yep.
we're getting point of order.
Yeah. Because at that point, it doesn't matter even who raised the point of order.
Yeah.
Once there's a point of order, sometimes you don't know who yelled it out. Just, oh.
Okay, so instead of opening someone's mic, you can say, we're getting point of order.
Yeah.
And then let's go
that-
from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good
And Kate,
idea.
that was the budget meeting, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we're coming up on that.
Yes.
Okay, so if we had questions, the formal process for questions be raise the hand, be recognized by the moderator, you turn on the mic, and they pose their question. Points of order, if the RTM members knew that the chat feature is the mechanism by which points of order are raised. It's a very rare occurrence, but nonetheless, we at least have a means to do it that would be more controllable, because now your chat's not flooded with a mix of questions and point of orders.
Right. And so maybe, that's something that you guys lay out in your rules for how the meetings are going to go. And then,
Yes.
Would
I
point
like
of order go through chat or go through questions?
questions. Somebody would have to
Sorry.
call that, because, if they raise their hand, we don't know what they're raising their hand for. So they would
Good
need
point.
to use the question function to call for, say they've want to raise point of order.
Right.
Okay, and then
I just anticipate the volume would be a lot less if that's the primary purpose of the question.
Yeah. And we really do have to
Feature.
train people not to use that question function to say, one of them was somebody we were nominating to serve on a panel, and the person sent the question like, who is this? I don't know who this person is.
Yeah, they're treating. it like
That
a
should have been
chat.
raise your hand and
Mhm.
ask that question.
Okay.
So Kate, just backing up, what does Seth see on his screen? He doesn't see questions and he doesn't see, does he see hands raised?
Nope. Nope.
No. So the only way he knows if there's a question or a hand raised is if you let him know.
Yes.
And you're the only one that's communicating with him. Cecil is not communicating, correct?
Cecil has, yeah.
He can, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Right, but did you just communicate with them verbally?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it would be easier if we always make Seth be a panelist. For one, it's easier to find him in the list for us, but it'll be easier for us to communicate with him if he's not in the general attendance.
Okay. So Kate, I want to be careful, cognizant of your time frame.
Yeah, my husband's going to get the dog.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much. No, that answers that question. Okay. I think we've talked about chat, hands, and questions, and we'll draft something up and run it by all of us to see if we all ended up with the same assumption. And Monica, maybe the two of us will talk to Seth again and say, okay, this is what we're thinking about, how best to help you, and and what kind of questions do you have based on and over the next week or so, we can maybe coalesce and get our arms around it with clear roles for everybody. Okay, would that work? Okay, with everybody's, so before, the only other thing I was going to move was the additional topics, and we've already talked about that. And my topic was Zoom versus GoToWebinar. And Kate, you mentioned you're looking at it, and when you do it, you'll get to it. Are we correct in saying that one of the reasons you're looking at it is for cost purposes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So we'll just be with you. I mean, our role is to help. If you want us to do something for you, with you, figure out some of the things, is to document, implement, discuss, make sure we have all the pieces in place. So
Okay.
let us know how you're going on that. Okay.
Okay.
What I'd like to do now is go into executive session, because the next issue we want to talk about has some security issues. So I'm going to turn off the recording. But there's no one else on the meeting, so I don't need to lock the meeting, correct? Because I would see if somebody's in the meeting, right?
Right, you'd see them come up.
Okay, so I can just turn off the recording and then we can continue, right?
Yes.
Is there anything else that needs to be discussed before we go into executive session? Okay, seeing none, I am going to go and stop the recording.